Welcome to Searching the Scriptures. Our Bible teacher will be Gunther von Haringa Sr. In this series of studies, we will be focusing on the book of Judges. Without further ado, let's look into God's Word, the Bible.
Welcome to Searching the Scriptures. This is part 4 of the book of Judges, and I thought we would do a recap today. We actually have been looking at some of the background of the book of Judges involving Moses and Joshua. And one of the truths that we've learned thus far about the book of Judges is that as a result of their not rooting out the inhabitants of the land quickly, as God had commanded them, there would be dire consequences. In fact, God spelled this out through Moses under divine inspiration in Deuteronomy 9:3. Deuteronomy 9:3. Understand, therefore, this day that Jehovah thy God is he which goeth over before thee as a consuming fire. He shall destroy them, and he shall bring them down before thy face. So shalt thou drive them out and destroy them quickly, as Jehovah hath said unto thee. Likewise, Joshua, as he was approaching the end of his ministry, reminded the Israelites of this admonition and the outcome of their disobedience if they failed to comply. We read about this in Joshua 23. Joshua 23. I'll read verses 3 to 9 and then 11 through 13. And ye have seen all that Jehovah your God hath done unto all these nations because of you. For Jehovah your God is he that hath fought for you. Behold, I have divided unto you by lot these nations that remain, to be an inheritance for your tribes, from Jordan with all the nations that I have cut off, even unto the great sea westward. And Jehovah your God, he shall expel them from before you, and drive them from out of your sight. And ye shall possess their land, as Jehovah your God hath promised unto you. Be ye therefore very courageous to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, that ye turn not aside therefrom to the right hand or to the left, that ye come not among these nations, these that remain among you, neither make mention of the names of their gods, nor cause to swear by them, neither serve them, nor bow yourselves unto them, but cleave unto Jehovah your God, as ye have done unto this day. For Jehovah hath driven out from before you great nations and strong, but as for you, no man hath been able to stand before you unto this day. And then I'll read verses 11 through 13. Take good heed, therefore, unto yourselves, that ye love Jehovah your God. Else, if ye do in any wise go back, and cleave unto the remnant of these nations, even these that remain among you, and shall make marriages with them, and go in unto them, and they to you, know for a certainty that Jehovah your God will no more drive out any of these nations from before you, But they shall be snares and traps unto you, and scourges in your sides, and thorns in your eyes, until ye perish from off this good land which Jehovah your God hath given you. And it's important to recognize the fact that just as God used the Israelites to bring judgment upon these heathen nations, when the Israelites disobeyed, God reversed the order, and he used other nations, heathen nations, to afflict Israel. And so we're going to see this cycle, as I've mentioned before, throughout the book of Judges. It's a cycle of rebellion, and then you have oppression by another heathen country. Then you have a deliverer that God raises up on behalf of the Israelites, and then you have a period of rest, and then the cycle starts all over again. Now, sadly, we learned that Israel did disobey frequently, even as this cycle suggests. And we read, for example, in Psalm 106, 34 to 40, Psalm 106, 34 to 40. They did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Jehovah commanded them, but were mingled among the heathen and learned their works. And they served their idols, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. Thus were they defiled with their own works, and went a whoring with their own inventions. Therefore was the wrath of Jehovah kindled against his people, insomuch that he abhorred his own inheritance. We read about a case in point in Joshua 17:13. It's Joshua 17:13. Yet it came to pass, when the children of Israel were waxen strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute, but did not utterly drive them out. And again, it reminds one of King Saul. God had given him a very specific command. I want you to destroy all of the Amalekites, the king, and all the people, and all the animals, everything that breathes. And that was basically the same command that he gave to the Israelites as they went into the land of Canaan. And what did King Saul do? He spared Agag and the best of the animals, presumably to sacrifice. And when Samuel the prophet came, he rebuked him and said, "You've done foolishly, because you haven't done exactly what the Lord commanded you to do, and now the kingdom is going to be torn away from you, and it's going to be given to another man, which would be David." So we see this same sin. We also learned that because of this, God set up a testing program through these nations which remained in the land. God used these nations to prove or to test Israel. If we go to Judges 2, 20 to 23, and 3, 1 through 4, God mentions this 3 times, this idea of proving or testing Israel. Joshua 2, 20 to 23. No, I'm sorry. This is Judges 2. I beg your pardon. Judges 2, 20 to 23, and then 3, 1 to 4. And the anger of Jehovah was hot against Israel. And he said, because that this people hath transgressed my covenant, which I commanded their fathers, and have not hearkened unto my voice, I also will not henceforth drive out any from before them of the nations which Joshua left when he died, that through them I may prove Israel, whether they will keep the way of Jehovah to walk therein, as their fathers did keep it, or not. Therefore Jehovah left those nations without driving them out hastily, neither delivered he them into the hand of Joshua. Then this is chapter 3 of Judges 1 to 4. Now these are the nations which Jehovah left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof, namely 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon unto the entering in of Hamath. And they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of Jehovah, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. Now, as we look at this, preeminent sin of Israel, and the preeminent sin was disobeying God and going against what God had said, because as a result of that, they would then worship these false gods. As a result of marrying into these heathen nations and setting up families, then it would completely dominate and take over every aspect of their life. Instead of worshiping the God of the Bible alone and cleaving to him and loving him, which means obeying him. And so because of this, we see the punishment that God brings upon them. Now, this is very similar to the churches and denominations. They did the same exact thing with their high places. Instead of revering the Bible and putting the Bible where it should be as the authority, instead they came up with their own doctrines and their own ideas, and that became the authority, their creeds and their confessions, and some might have been fine, but the problem is the allegiance. The allegiance shifted, from God and his word alone to what man says. And this is a huge problem, because the moment an individual or a church or a denomination, in this case, an entire country, does that, God cannot put up with it. And in fact, this was his wife. He was married to the nation of Israel. And so this is tantamount to spiritual fornication, to spiritual adultery. And God would have had to stone the entire nation, because that is the punishment for adultery. But he couldn't do that for obvious reasons. The Messiah had to be born. There were many Jews that were elect, that had to be born, that had to live out their lives, that had to become saved during that time. And so, in his divine wisdom, he simply gave himself a law allowing him to divorce national Israel in order so that he didn't have to kill every single Israelite and essentially destroy the nation. But this idea of testing Israel also was in evidence during the 40-year wilderness sojourn. For example, if we go to Deuteronomy 8:2, we see this as well. Deuteronomy 8:2. Let's see, maybe let's start with verse 1. All the commandments which I command thee this day shall ye observe to do, that ye may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which Jehovah sware unto your fathers. And thou shalt remember all the way which Jehovah thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. I'll read verse 3. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Jehovah doth man live. This is what God expects of a true believer, that the Bible alone is everything. There isn't anything else. It's the supreme authority. And of course, we can go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. God set up a testing program there. And all the way up with the churches with Israel, with the churches and denominations, even after the end of the church age, during the Great Tribulation, and right up to our present time, God continues to test mankind. And now that we're in the day of judgment, it's to identify those that are wood, hay, and stubble from those who are gold, silver, and precious stones, as we read in 1 Corinthians 3:12. Now, let me also examine two other passages side by side, Deuteronomy 9:3 and Judges 2:23. We want to look at these side by side in order to discover that the Hebrew words rendered quickly and hastily, respectively, are the same term, namely 41:18 is the Strong's number. Deuteronomy 9:3, which I read earlier, understand therefore this day that Jehovah thy God is he which goeth over before thee, as a consuming fire he shall destroy them, and he shall bring them down before thy face. So shalt thou drive them out and destroy them quickly, as Jehovah hath said unto thee. And in contrast to that, in Judges 2:23, the same word is translated hastily. Strong's number 41:18. Therefore, Jehovah left those nations without driving them out hastily, neither delivered he them into the hand of Joshua. Now, at the close of our last study, which would have been number 3, I mentioned that we would be taking a closer look at Deuteronomy 7:22. And this same word, 41:18, also appears in Deuteronomy 7:22, and it's at once. And Jehovah thy God will put out those nations before thee by little and little. Thou mayest not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. And this is a very intriguing verse, and it highlights this axiom of little by little. This is the way, the timetable, you could say, by which God was going to allow the Israelites to dispossess these nations. It wasn't all at once. It was going to be little by little. Now, there is another verse that is quite similar to this, and it's in verses 29 to 31 of Exodus 23. Exodus 23. And just to get a little bit of the context, I'm going to read 27 to 33. I will send my fear before thee, and will destroy all the people to whom thou shalt come, and I will make all thine enemies turn their backs unto thee. And I will send hornets before thee, which shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite from before thee. I will not drive them out from before thee in 1 year, lest the land become desolate, and the beast of the field multiply against thee. By little and little I will drive them out from before thee, until thou be increased and inherit the land. And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee. Excuse me. Now, what we want to do is, and I think we'll just start with Exodus 23:29 before looking at, because of this additional information, before looking at Deuteronomy 7:22. And we see in Deuteronomy 7:22 that God gives two reasons for not driving out the inhabitants of the land in 1 year. The land becomes desolate, and the beasts of the field multiply. So we want to take a look at this word, become desolate, and it is used about 58 times, and it's Strong's number 8077. And it's always used in the context of judgment. There are a few places where it's mostly translated desolate or desolation or desolations. A couple places it's translated waste or utterly, but it's always in the context of judgment. If we go to Leviticus 25:26, we find there a number of instructions and commandments that God gives, and the subsequent blessings or curses if they disobey God's commandments after they enter into the promised land. And one of these we find in Leviticus 26:33. Leviticus 26:33. And I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Here the word is rendered desolate. Also, if you go to Joshua 8:28, we find another example of this word, Strong's number 8077, Joshua 8:28. And Joshua burnt Ai and made it a heap forever, even a desolation unto this day. We can also go over to Jeremiah 9:11. Jeremiah 9:11, and this is going to be in the context of the end of the church age, where we read, "And I will make Jerusalem heaps and a den of dragons, and I will make the cities of Judah desolate, without an inhabitant." And the word there again is desolate. And, once God removed himself from the churches and denominations on May 1988, there was no more salvation in the churches, just as he did previously when he divorced himself from national Israel when Christ hung on the cross in AD 33. Now, another passage we can look at that has the same word, 8077, desolations, is in Jeremiah 25:12. And this chapter is speaking about the fall of Babylon, as well as the end of the church age, and showing this transition where, like in 1 Peter 4:17, it says judgment must first begin at the house of God, and then it transitions to the world. And this is really the Old Testament, the Old Testament counterpart of 1 Peter 4:17, Jeremiah 25:29. But in verse 12, we read, "And it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith Jehovah, for their iniquity and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetual desolations." It's the word desolations again. And we can go to one other passage, which is Ezekiel 14 and verses 15 and 16. "If I cause noisome beasts to pass through the land, and they spoil it, so that it be desolate, that no man may pass through because of the beasts. Though these 3 men were in it, as I live, saith Jehovah God, they shall deliver neither sons nor daughters, they only shall be delivered, but the land shall be desolate." And this is, again, speaking about our day, and it's interesting because of the fact that we also find in this passage, in Ezekiel 14, 15, and 16, the same words, beasts of the field. But here, instead of field, it's "I cause noisome." It's the same word for beasts, for field. Strong's number 7704, and beasts is Strong's number 2416. And we don't have a lot of time left, but in our next study, we will take a look at these words, as they're going to shed more light on these two passages, Deuteronomy 7:22, and also this passage in Exodus 23:29. And one thing that we want to do is we want to consider the beast of the field. And again, we ran out of time today, so Lord willing, we will do this in our next study, which is going to be study number 5. May the Lord richly bless you.
Thank you for joining us today for Searching the Scriptures. Until next time, to God be the glory.